Mohan Kumar, from what I pick out, this reflects a bit of an emperor mindset. Go to BRICS because you set the agenda, you can expand the BRICS, bring more countries on board. Don't come to the G20 because this is more of a dialogue between equals. President Biden could ask some tough questions. Leaders of European countries could ask some uncomfortable questions. So stay away. Lead where you can, where you are Lord and Master, or at least try and be Lord and Master, and don't come to a place where you can be asked uncomfortable questions. How do you respond to the suggestion that came from Beijing, where Andrew Luing seems to suggest that this is to do with his safety, that he much rather decided to stay away?
Thank you for having me. I think I agree with the China strategist on your show that there is a combination of factors at work here. I don't think it's got to do with India. It's ironical that the Chinese strategist on your show and the external affairs minister both agree that Xi Jinping staying away has nothing to do with India. I think what's happened to G20 is that 5 years ago, you could have said it's the economy stupid. Today, you have to say it is the geopolitics stupid. So I agree with you to the extent that I think China is more comfortable in fora like the BRICS. I think the US-China relationship has much more to do with Xi Jinping not showing up in Delhi. There are also uncomfortable questions about Chinese support to Russia. And of course, you will have some press person from India putting a mic in Xi Jinping's face and saying, why are you doing things at the border that we don't like? So a combination of factors, but you have to say that the Prime Minister of China is, I think, a plenipotentiary representative. So to that extent, I agree with my colleagues who have said that. I think the last point I want to make is don't judge the G20 summit on the basis of 2 or 3 paragraphs which have to do with Ukraine, which will be described as the chair's summary. If out of 50 paragraphs, 47 paragraphs are an outcome document, the document takes into account SDGs, the document takes into account climate change, the document deals with the debt problem, and we need Chinese cooperation there. We have a good paragraph on digital public infrastructure, and you have one on food security. I think India will walk away with tremendous honors because it has set itself up with one overriding objective, which is to be the voice of the global South. So these are the issues I would look for, not those 2 paragraphs.
Mohan Kumar, can I ask you this question? When it comes to being voice of the global South, China has been wanting to project itself as the leader of the global South over the past several decades, making deep inroads with countries in Africa and elsewhere through the Belt and Road Initiative and a lot of the money and infrastructure spends that China has done. Is that going to lead to an inevitable contestation between India and China? India wanting to be the voice of the global South and China thinking of itself as the natural leader of the global South?
May I answer, Rahul, by just saying the following? Give me 1 minute. You can say China is a big creditor. You can say China is a big partner of the global South. China can be a project assistance lender. China cannot be a leader for the simple reason I consider China as an upper middle income country with a 14 trillion economy. It does not belong to the global South. It can be a partner to the global South. So I really think you have to belong to the global South in order to be a leader. And I would contend that it is India which can fill that role.
Craig Kafura, President Biden had a COVID scare, his wife testing positive. I'm told from what we heard from the spokesperson in the White House that he'll have to follow COVID protocols, which potentially means he may have a mask on for some of these meetings, may prefer to stay outdoors, etc. So how does that impact? He's staying over in Germany en route to India. Does this play any role at all, or do you think he'll be as raring to go as is possible despite what happened with his wife getting COVID?
I don't think it's going to affect him at all. And I think if you listen to what he has said and what National Security Advisor Sullivan has said in the days leading up to the G20, I think you're absolutely right that the focus of their approach is not going to be on Ukraine or on bilateral issues with China. They'll deal with those in other fora. The focus of the United States coming into this summit seems to be firmly fixed on those issues of development, and especially development in the global south. The U.S. says that it warmly welcomes this proposal of permanent membership for the African Union, and the Biden administration is trying to, as they say, fundamentally reshape some of the institutions that it has used for the last several decades, like the World Bank and the IMF. I think the real question will be, how much room is there to modify those organizations in a way that satisfies all parties at the table? One of the challenges with the G20 has always been that you have a lot of voices in the room who all have a lot of different interests at stake in these institutions. That's what makes statements on substantive issues very difficult.
What's your reading of the absence of the Chinese president and the fact that the Chinese prime minister is the one who will be representing China during the G20?
Well, I agree with your previous guests. I think Li Keqiang is perfectly able to represent China. Xi's absence is a little harder to read, and you do have these conflicting explanations about why that might be. I'm not sure it's an issue of, seat voters pulling things, but I do think there might be something to your view of this as not wanting to be in an institution where he's going to be maybe harassed by journalists, where he's not going to have that leadership role that he's able to step into in something like the BRICS Plus Summit, where when the media reports back home, they want to be able to report pages and pages of Xi Jinping leading the world, not Xi Jinping, one among others, not necessarily in that leadership role that he so clearly desires. The real question, I think, will be, does he attend the APEC summit in San Francisco this November? If he attends that meeting, then okay, whatever is happening at home, whatever kept him out of the G20, we can put aside. If he does not attend the APEC summit in November in San Francisco, then I think we have to ask real questions about what's keeping him from attending these meetings. Because although Li Keqiang can represent China, Xi Jinping is very clearly the man in charge in China. There will be an effect, I think, on China's ability to fully represent and fully commit to things without Xi Jinping's personal stamp on some of these issues.